been playing fighting games for as long as I can remember. It was the earliest genre I remember playing, and it was the one where I really wanted to get good at, to the point where I will spend my entire weekend playing nothing else but those games. It's also a genre that, alongside JRPGs, managed to stand the test of time, especially during some of my more depressing moments in life. But over these past 5 years, my desire to play fighting games was starting to reach a whole new peak. Some of it had to do with some of the content creators I was watching, like Darrow, Aaron Dorgy, and Gal Winquotes. Then there's the amount of fighting games that have been coming out over these past 5 years I've heard nothing but good things about. And yes, before you say it, this includes Tekken 8. And to be honest, I am not looking forward to talking about that game, especially with everything going on with Season 2. But what really did it for me recently was when I ended up getting my very own fight stick. Love it, yeah. You know, after taking a trip down memory lane, playing fighting games I used to play as a kid, I was like, you know what? I want to talk about my experience with the genre. I want to talk about everything. The good, the bad, and some of the more weird moments with this genre. But before we actually get started, let's get one thing out of the way real quick. I haven't played every fighting game in existence. Of course, I know that's like, oh, no shit. I mean, obviously. But, we're covering bases just in case, because I know someone is bound to ask me saying like, oh, have you played this fighting game? No, I haven't. And you'll understand why in a minute. While there are games I have played or seen before, it was only in passing and not enough to leave an impact on me besides being like, oh, that's pretty cool. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but for the most part, the games I'm mentioning throughout this video are the ones that had the most impact on me. The ones that influence the way I play and the way I interact with these games. And you know what? While we're on that subject, let's get some of these franchises out of the way. Starting off, we have Mortal Kombat, which might seem sacrilege to some, but this was a franchise that I knew early on wasn't for me. Most of it had to do with how stiff the game looked, and it didn't help that my first experience with the franchise was with Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. I wasn't missing much then, and I am damn sure not missing much now. But if I was consuming anything Mortal Kombat related, it would be Drew the movies, which were pretty cool. And yes, this includes Annihilation. I don't care what any of you guys say, this movie is campy as hell and I love it. Next is King of Fighters, and this one is a little strange. I've always been aware of this franchise, but it wasn't until watching Aaron Dorgy's videos about them when I had the desire to try them out. Even then, I'm still scared to play these games because to me, it looks and feels way more difficult than any of the other 2D fighters that I've played before. Then we have Virtua Fighter, which I've always known about being a Sega fan, but I never played much of it until I started playing Yakuza. Even then, it was somewhat weird since not only was there only 3 buttons, but you had a dedicated block button, which felt weird because I'm used to holding back to block. Though, if there's anything that would really stop me from playing Virtua Fighter, it definitely has to be the move list. That shit makes Tekken seem as normal as Street Fighters, if that makes sense. And finally, I haven't played the following games: Bloody Roar, Fatal Fury, The Rumblefish, Lucky Star Lucky Battle Chronicle, and Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax. Now, if you were thinking to yourself, what the fuck were those last 2 games? I promise you, they are real. I just wanted an excuse to bring them up, because when else am I going to be able to bring up something as weird as those games? But with that out the way, let's go and get started with my history with fighting games. And let me tell you right now, the start of it was a very weird and janky one. I don't remember a lot of my early childhood besides playing stuff like Pro Skater 3 and A Bug's Life on my dad's PS1, but I do vividly remember being taken to GameStop to get one game of my choice, and out of all the possible PS1 fighting games available, what did I end up getting? Was it Street Fighter? Nope. Tekken? Nope. Marvel vs. Capcom? Nope. Fuck it, Ballerina Toshinden? Unfortunately, no. The game I picked out was... In my defense, I was like 5 when I picked this game out. God damn it. While this game is the definition of jank, it gave me a general idea of what fighting games were. It's just you and your opponent running them hands until one of you gets knocked out. Sure, you could just punch, kick, and throw key blasts at each other, but if you learn that character's special moves, you can end up doing some serious damage. There was just one problem with that. This game, again, was janky as all hell. Movement feels stiff, inputs barely want to come out, and if you want to do certain moves, then you better pray to Kami that it works. Especially if you're trying to do all of this. Despite this game's issues, I still loved it, and I want to say that this game made me a fan of Dragon Ball, because after this, I ended up spending most of my Saturday nights trying to catch new episodes on Toonami. Good times, good times. Now, before we move on to my other introduction of fighting games, let me give you guys some tips for those who hate themselves enough to want to try this game out for themselves. I guarantee you guys that it will make things so much better. Go to training mode, pick the character you want to play as the most, and learn that your favorite character might very well be as. In that case, pick Goku. Any Goku, it does not matter. Once you're in training mode, do quarter, circle, and square to do this move or any variation of it. Afterwards, start up the arcade ladder, and when the round starts, try to get close and hit your opponent. And once you do, start spamming the shit out of that one move. Depending on the character, you can dash forward and punch them to reset their animation and start the process all over again. In all my years of playing this game, I've never come across this before, and now that I'm thinking about it, this playthrough might be the first time I managed to find an infinite combo. Or would it be called a touch of death? Either way, it largely works against almost every character barring the big bitch Super Baby. Plus, these moves do look pretty cool in action, and shit. Looking back, Final Bout wasn't exactly the best introduction to fighting games. However, it wasn't enough to deter me from the entire genre, as a couple years later, I would end up going to a particular bowling alley that had a section for arcade games. And there I would end up coming across Rival Schools, a fighting game where a bunch of high schoolers and teachers were running hands and launching motherfuckers into the sky. And spoiler alert, I am still somewhat obsessed with this game. There's a lot about Rival Schools that's just great. The title screen, the amount of style that's both psychedelic and in your face, and finally the gameplay, which oddly enough was easy. Most if not all the characters in this game have fairly simple inputs that largely boils down to doing quarter circles, quarter circle back, DP, and half circles. And when you add in the fact that the inputs for super moves are damn near universal, it makes this game feel less daunting to get into. But that wasn't the reason why I love this game. No. The reason was for one thing that left a big impact on me and how I would go about fighting games. Combos. These bitches have my 7-year-old ass invested, cause seeing the CPU launch someone in the air and beat their ass felt like I was watching an episode of Dragon Ball Z or Naruto. And I loved it so much that every time I went to that bowling alley, I would waste all my quarters trying to figure out how to do it. It even got to the point where my mom had to drag me off that bitch and cut me off like I was a recovering alcoholic in a bar. I even had to pull myself off while recording cause I wasted a good amount of time in the practice mode doing stuff like this. God, I love this game. Despite the sequel being superior in every way, Rival School still holds a special place in my heart. If you guys want to know more about my thoughts on this game and Final Bout, you guys can check it out on the card on top. Warning, that was my first ever video, so please be very gentle with it. And also, the more I think about it, I might be remaking that video. We'll see. Either way, Rival Schools will be the start of me liking fighting games. If I was at home, I was playing Final Bout, and if I went to that bowling alley, 9 times out of 10, I was playing Rival Schools. Or House of the Dead, though I did not get far into it because that game scared the shit out of me as a kid. Despite me liking fighting games, my time with it was limited. While I loved playing Final Bout, most of my time was spent on my Game Boy Advance playing games like Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories and Crash in Trance. And if I wasn't doing that, then I was more than likely watching Cartoon Network or X-Play on G4 TV. But one day, my parents would end up giving me a game that would end up satisfying my fighting game itch. And that particular game was Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. And yeah, let's actually address the elephant in the room real quick. This game is a beat 'em up, a really good beat 'em up, but a beat 'em up nonetheless. However, when you made it to certain stages like the World Tournament, Land of Corrin, Bada's Palace, and Chao Castle, it would turn into a small but bona fide fighting game. During these stages, the goal was to drain the opponent's gauge below their health bar to 0, and once that gauge was gone, you can launch them into the air to lay down the pain. Literally. So, why was it such a big deal to me? Again, I was obsessed with this game, so much so that every time I played Advanced Adventure, I was on the 101 mode trying things out. Now, despite this being a smaller and more simplified fighting game, it still had a lot of concepts seen within those games. When the match starts, you could just rush your opponent down and beat the hell out of them, or you could play it smart and try to hit the opponent when they whiff an attack. And whenever you knock your opponent to the ground, you can use a beam attack and start getting up to deal more damage. Or if you're on the opposite end, you can teleport behind the enemy to avoid getting hit any further. Both of these situations represent some of the core ingredients for fighting games being the neutral game and mix-ups. And if you're able to understand it and apply it effectively, you could become a real problem against other players. And seeing this be applied to something as simple as Advanced Adventure is kind of wild. Now, looking back, I don't think I fully understood this stuff as a kid, but considering the way I currently play fighting games, I would say it had a pretty big effect on me. For the next couple of years, Advanced Adventure would end up being the game that would scratch my fighting game itch. Though Now that I think about it, there was also Super Dragon Ball Z, but my memories with that game can be applied to another game that I spent way more time on. But in 2008, things were starting to change. Electropop started taking over the charge, we ended up getting a black president that still pisses people off to this day, and finally the financial crisis that might very well be getting a much darker sequel. But for real though, 8-year-old me was about to be introduced to a game that not only showed me a side of fighting games that I never really thought about, but it will also make me a bigger gamer than I already was at that point. And I feel like the best way to introduce this game is with my big gay dance. Now, I don't feel like I have to say much about Brawl. It has an iconic opening that many still remember to this day. It brought Solid Snake and Sonic as guest characters, setting the stage for what we have today with Ultimate. It has a story mode that hasn't even been topped by any of the other games in the franchise, and the amount of solo content in this bitch is enough to rival Tekken, specifically Tekken 5, and that was a pretty content-rich game. Despite some of the mechanics introduced not being great, and also introducing the terror that is Meta Knight, Brawl was pretty sick. But unlike the other games I mentioned so far, Brawl was the first that showed me that fighting games were best enjoyed with other people. There's nothing more hilarious than fighting one another and either pulling off some wacky stunts or jumping one of your friends who had more stocks than anyone else. And when you compare that with playing by yourself, the experience just isn't the same. It would be like playing a board game by yourself. Yeah, you're playing the game, but it would be better if you had others with you. But Brawl will have an impact on me in other ways that wasn't just related to fighting games. It introduced me to more gaming franchises, as well as setting the stage for me to become obsessed with retro games and emulation as a whole, which, you know, it's kind of funny considering the campaign Nintendo has been on lately, treating it like it's the Antichrist. Brawl will also have a hand in me becoming eternally online. Yay! That clip I showed earlier was from Brawl Taunts, a series of parody videos about Brawl that led me down a rabbit hole to other creators on YouTube and Newgrounds. Now, should I have been watching these videos at the ripe old age of 9? Fuck no. But at the end of the day, I still loved it. By the time I was playing Brawl, I was starting to get a sense of what fighting games were and what made them special, and it helped that around 2009/2010, I ended up getting my own laptop, which led to me watching videos about fighting games and or watching Mugen matches. Easily one of the best, yet weirdest games to exist, since you could watch Ronald McDonald fight Colonel Sanders to see which fast food spot was the best. By the way, it's a close tie between Five Guys and Popeyes. Fight me. But the next few years would shoot my love for fighting games to another level when I ended up gaining 4 games that made me want to get really good at the genre. And the first of these games is the one that actually brought it back to popularity, Street Fighter 4. Do I even need to introduce this game? Better yet, it is time for a history lesson, folks. Lock in. In the early 2000s, fighting games were starting to wane in popularity. There was a few reasons why this was happening, most of it having to do with the genre being, well, oversaturated. But one of the other big reasons was that more people were playing games at home rather than going to arcades. Or at least that was an issue in America, since most arcades were gone by the mid to late 2000s, and the only big one was Dave & Buster's. Opinions on that place aside, it wasn't a great time. But when Street Fighter 4 came out, it fixed that issue by letting you play against others online. While the concept was far from being new, like you could literally do it on the original Xbox, Street Fighter 4 made the process of doing it a lot more functional. Or as functional as it could be in 2009. And when you add in other stuff like locals, posting clips on YouTube, and so on and so forth, it brought a new energy into the FGC that we still see to this day. And, you know, that's cool and all, but what impact did this game have on me? What was so special about Street Fighter 4 that had 9-year-old me going crazy over it? Well, it damn near cemented my love for fighting games just like anyone else that started off with Street Fighter 4. Unlike the games I played before, Street Fighter 4 felt like the next stepping stone of what to expect in a fighter. The combat gave you a good number of tools that could be used to either defend yourself or set yourself up for some interesting combos. The characters included were all distinct from one another and had something that made them memorable. Some of them that comes to mind are characters like Zangief, this big wrestler who, despite being slow, can quickly delete your health bar if he ends up throwing you. But if you weren't vibing with that, you could play as Ryu and Ken. While they're both similar and are able to shoot fireballs, then kick you from point A to B, and uppercut you into the air, their playstyles were polar opposites. Ryu was a defensive type that used his moves to create space between you and your opponent. Meanwhile, Ken out here doing the opposite and being all about offense. And then finally, you have the music, and oh my god, this opening was just... man, like this shit right here was one of the many songs that was on constant replay on my iPod. Now, only I can actually put this song in my video without getting fucked by copyright. There's a lot more that I can talk about that's great about this game, but there's just as many things that are very difficult. Ask someone about one frame links, I guarantee that you're going to trigger somebody's PTSD. Yet despite how hard this game was, it never stopped me from loving it. If anything, it made me want to get better at it. I spent so much time learning how to do motion inputs, and whenever I wasn't doing that, I would be in the trial mode trying to get a good idea of how characters play. I was so dedicated that a couple years later, when I got my 3DS, I ended up getting Street Fighter 4 3D Edition so I could keep playing whenever I was on the go. Though, to be honest, it probably wasn't the best idea. That circle pad was low-key not built for this game, but at the end of the day, I loved it and kept playing it until I made the dumb decision to sell my 3DS. One of the many mistakes that I regret to this day. However, I would have to sort of split my time with this game, as a year later, I would end up getting Marvel vs. Capcom 3 courtesy of my aunt. And fun fact, this will be the only version of this game I owned as a kid. I asked for the Ultimate version a lot, but my parents weren't having it. I'm still slightly peeved about not getting it, but that more or less has to do with the fact that I haven't been able to buy it yet. Mainly because of this collection right here, yeah, but also this. If you want to support a broke college student, you can like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, follow me on BlueSky, link in the description below. Yeah. What was I talking about again? All right, Marvel vs. Capcom. Do I have to explain why this game is a classic? Nope, but I can talk about my brief stint with this franchise because this is not my first rodeo. I knew about Marvel vs. Capcom thanks to seeing my cousins play it whenever I went down to Louisiana. And the one thing I always remember about these games is how different it was compared to other fighters. It was fast, you had a wide variety of characters to choose from, and it had air combos, say less. But one thing that really stood out for me was how easy it was to pick up compared to Street Fighter 4. Though major emphasis on somewhat, because while this game is easy to pick up, it is also hard to master. If you want to see just how crazy this game mechanics can get, go into the mission mode and try out Dante. You'll quickly see the amount of shit that you're gonna have to go through. But other than that, there's not a lot left to say about this game when it comes to its, well, gameplay. It's fast, the inputs aren't as crazy depending on who you're playing as, and there's a lot of characters that are cool in their own way. But speaking of characters, that's one of the things that I remember the most from this game. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was my introduction to a lot of Capcom and Marvel characters. I knew some of them before, like Ryu, Chris Redfield, Spider-Man, and the Wolverine, just to name a few. But there were some that I didn't know about, like Dante, Zero, X-23, and Deadpool. And as I continue playing this game, they will end up becoming some of my most favorite characters to play, especially Zero and X-23. They just look so damn cool, especially X-23. Now, you would think that I want to be jumping on to another fighting game at this point, right? No, because the following year I would end up getting Street Fighter Cross Tekken. But you wanna know what's weird about this game? I didn't play it as much as the other games. And you wanna know why? That's why. Unlike most people, I don't necessarily have a burning hatred for Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Despite all of its problems, there's things about this game that's cool, like launchers and cross assaults. It also had a pretty decent tutorial mode that gave you a good idea on how the systems work. Then there were the characters, with many of them being new to me. Actually thinking about it, there were a few characters I was just confused about. Like, why does Yoshimitsu look like an alien? Why am I fighting a bear? Who the fuck did Heihashi's hair like that? Is King a man, or is he half man, half tiger? And is that supposed to be Mega Man? Oh, hell no! Hell no! Speaking of which, if you've heard anything negative about this game, it was more than likely about the gems and DLC. My issue specifically was with the gems, which can go straight to hell. I did not like the idea of using them and just wanted to play the characters as is. Then there's the fact that you couldn't really earn them in game. Instead, you had to buy them. Mind you, the ones you bought were so strong that they were practically paid to win. Say it with me, kids. Bullshit. I won't lie, I did have some fun moments playing with family, but beyond that, if I wanted to play a fighting game, it was going to be either Marvel vs. Capcom 3 or Street Fighter 4. But whenever I look back at this game, I think about the fact that this is the game that exposed me to Tekken, and oddly enough, without it, I probably wouldn't have given the franchise a chance. Actually, scratch that. I still would if it wasn't for one particular game. But for now, we're gonna have to put a pin on that because we have one more game to talk about. Now, if I had to rank my playtime with the 3 games I mentioned so far, it would be Street Fighter Cross Tekken at 4th, Marvel vs. Capcom at 3rd, and finally Street Fighter 2 at 2nd. Kinda weird considering the impact that this game left on me. But this next game here was something different. Something that showed me another side of fighting games that I would come to enjoy way more than what Street Fighter has shown me. And that game was Persona 4 Arena. But we need a little bit of context surrounding how I came across this game because this wasn't the game I originally wanted. Around the time P4 Arena came out, I was obsessed with the Persona 4 anime. The first thing I did when I got home from school was go straight to the TV to see if a new episode came out on the anime network. And if there was, I said fuck my homework and watched that new episode. But whenever I asked my parents to get the game for me, it came with a quick and resounding no that to this day still puzzles me. Also, sorry to get off on a tangent here, but I never understood why my parents were so against me getting games for older consoles when I was a kid. I guarantee that they probably would have saved money getting me Sonic 3 on Genesis than getting me Family Party, Dirty Great Games, or Game Party. I love them, but at the same time, Jesus Christ. Now, I don't remember if I ended up getting this for Christmas or for my birthday, but I remember opening one of my gifts and expecting it to be Persona 4, but instead, it was Persona 4 Arena. Now, I will admit, I was disappointed at first until I actually played this game and went, oh my God! This game was on a different level from what I've seen with the other fighters that I've played. Sure, certain things were similar, like motion inputs and air dashes, but there were certain things that were just foreign to me. The movement was fluid and it felt like you had a good amount of speed depending on the character you played as, and like I mentioned earlier, it had air dashes, not just for one or two characters, but for everyone. And fun fact for y'all, I am a slut for some air dashes. The overall combat, while easy to pick up, was hard to master since they gave you a lot of tools to use at your disposal. Someone on your ass, you can use burst to get them off. Need something to get you out of a dicey situation, use one more cancel. And let's say you want to put belt to ass after defending for a bit, use an all-out attack to get them off of you, or launch them high in the sky for some combos. And then there was the music, which if you played a Persona game before, you already know how good it is, especially Mass Destruction. Now, I had that shit playing on my iPod on repeat. There's a lot more I could get into, but the point I'm trying to make is that there was so much about this game that I fell in love with. I haven't even mentioned the fact that the art for this game just looks so damn good. 12-year-old me was mesmerized. Overall, I was hooked, and not only was I invested in getting better at this game, but I will also be curious about the people who developed it, Arc System Works, a company known for fighting games like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, the latter being a game that I had wanted for so long, but never got it for reasons beyond my comprehension. Now, there is an updated version of Persona 4 Arena that added a whole slew of new characters, and just like MVC3, I wouldn't get the chance to play / own it for myself, but hopefully that'll change if things don't go to shit. Now, from 2012 to somewhere around 2015, 2016, Persona 4 Arena would end up becoming one of my most played games next to Sonic Adventure and Resident Evil 5. And while there were other games that was close to taking that spot, like the hellhole known as League of Legends, it barely put a dent in my overall playtime. But then 2016 happened, and that was followed up by 2 years of other hell. Why, you may ask? Well, I sold everything. Okay, it wasn't actually everything, but it might as well have been. I often consider this period as the Dark Ages because I wasn't really engaging with anything related to gaming and anime. Why, you may ask? Simple. Toxic masculinity, the stupidest shit on God's green earth, but being the impressionable kid that I was that wanted to be liked by everyone, I fell for it, and because of it, I gave almost everything away that I cared about just so that I could say I was a man. My collection of Xbox 360 and Wii games, gone. My small collection of manga and Shonen Jump magazines, gone. My eccentric personality, gone. Okay, not really. My eccentric personality was still there, but I also try to act mysterious, and thinking about that also makes me cringe. Ugh. Regardless, the point I'm trying to make was that I gave everything away to be someone I wasn't, and it was horrible. Yet despite this, I still kept up with and played video games whenever I was able to. Games like Life is Strange, Sonic Mania, Shin Megami Tensei, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, and Danganronpa. God damn it! But 2019 and 2020 would be special as I ended up playing 2 games that will revitalize my love for fighting games. The first of these being Tekken 7. I alluded to this earlier, but despite how meh Street Fighter Cross Tekken was, it was the game that got me interested in the franchise. But until 2019, I wouldn't be able to spend much time with it. There was Tekken 5, which I played at an arcade near me when I was in middle school. Finally, there was Tekken Revolution, which was weird. Nevertheless, I would finally find the time to play it, and when I did, I would end up loving the hell out of it. it. Though it did take me a while to get into the groove of things, since it was my first time playing a 3D fighter, and compared to 2D fighters, it was a whole different ballpark. There's a bigger emphasis on movement to avoid attacks, whether it be by sidestepping into the foreground or background, or doing something like the Korean backdash to widen the gap between you and your opponent. Combat in general was way more grounded, and unless you were playing Akuma, Eliza, and Geese, you weren't going to see people jumping towards their opponent to attack them. And easily the most daunting thing to experience is the long list of moves that a character can have. While most of them aren't too difficult, you got stuff like the Electric Wind God Fist that requires you to press forward, go into neutral, press down, and then down, forward, and 2 at the same time. And if you're confused about what I meant by 2, and it's usually the triangle or Y button, which, I mean, in this case, like, if I turn this on real quick, or, yeah, it's like this button right here. Yay! All of this would make anybody not want to try this game. It's still kind of the case to this day, but as you can tell from me, I don't like to toot my own horn or anything, but I am one tenacious motherfucker. The more I played, the more and more I understood what I needed to do. I had to be patient. I had to really understand the character mashup instead of just winging it, and above all, be defensive. It did take a minute to get everything down pat, and spoiler alert, I wouldn't apply all of this until like Tekken 8, but the experience was fun, and so much in fact that it became the first fighting game I played online, which was filled with me getting my ass whooped 6 ways from Sunday. But hey, you gotta start from somewhere, right? Now we fast forward a bit to 2020 when I ended up getting Smash Ultimate for my birthday, and honestly my experience with this game was very interesting. My overall experience with Ultimate was very similar to Brawl. A lot of it was spent playing with friends and family, especially when COVID hit. If I wasn't playing Yakuza or Nocturne, then 9 times out of 10 I was playing Ultimate and trying to get good at it. Eventually, this and my curiosity / boredom would lead to me doing something that to this day I want to go through again. And that thing was signing up for tournaments. I know that sounded a little dramatic with the lead up, but it makes sense, especially with the fact that this was like, I never had done this before. Smash Ultimate was the first and so far only fighting game I ever did a tournament for. In fact, I actually went through 2 of them, one for my school and one that was online. As for how I did in these tournaments, I got my ass whooped. Granted, the second tournament was a little better, but not by much. Despite getting my ass eviscerated, those losses actually made me want to sign up for more tournaments. There was something fun about going up against other people, seeing how skilled they were, and wondering if you could beat them with just bare fundamentals. It was almost like a test of skill that would push me to get better and better, like I was a protagonist in a battle shonen. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do any tournaments for 2 particular reasons. Reason number 1, I don't have a driver's license. And you know, considering the fact that everyone in this country likes to drive like a goddamn maniac, it's enough for me to say, fuck that, I value my life. And reason number 2, if I were to, you know, try to sign up for an online tournament, I would get stoned for playing on Wi-Fi. So yeah, I'm cooked. My time with Tekken 7 and Smash Ultimate would eventually lead to me loving fighting games again, but on a whole nother level. Instead of me just playing fighting games, I was watching others either talking about it or playing it for themselves. Whether it be Justin Wong going through the hell that is the KOF 13 trials, or watching Maximilian do fight Shin Akuma and me feeling good, knowing that I wasn't the only one that struggled against this motherfucker. And then there's Aaron Dorgy and Gal Winkle, whose videos led to me learning a lot more about known franchises like King of Fighters and Darkstalkers, as well as obscure games like Bariki 1, Slap Happy Rhythm Busters, and the Katsuki BlizzCon. The latter being one that to this day I'm still curious about, cause what the fuck do you mean you can play as a tank? Why is this a thing? But one thing popped up during this time that I would say is pretty iconic when you think about fighting games. Fight sticks. These bad boys are my favorite way to play fighting games. While they don't give you a competitive edge, for some it can make playing fighting games a lot more comfortable. And I don't know about y'all, but there's something about pressing the buttons and moving the joystick around that just gets me all hot and bothered for some reason. But until earlier this year, I've been mainly playing fighting games on pad. This option is pretty much the default, and for some, it might even be the only controller they use. I don't know if I'm weird, but playing fighting games on pad always felt uncomfortable to me. Because like, the thing to understand with me, right, is that I mainly use my thumbs when playing fighting games, right? Like I've seen people use the claw method. I can't do that because it feels weird to use. And when I try to go be quick, especially with high execution combos, I can never do it. And I don't know if it's just because I can't maneuver my fingers well, or if it's just because of this. What the fuck? Either way, I put up with it until I got my fight stick earlier this year, and God, I love it. Going from button to button never felt easier, and I had so much fun trying to do the inputs. But for those getting into fighting games, would I recommend getting a fight stick for yourselves? Kinda. Let's be real here, fight sticks are expensive, and even though they have been getting slightly more affordable, the other issue is that there's way more options now, which can be overwhelming. You got your traditional fight sticks, and you have the leverless options that range from being all buttons or having a few of them with keys. Either way, it's a lot, and as much as I love traditional fight sticks, I know not everybody is down with that. But at the end of the day, it's based on what you find to be the most comfortable, because there's nothing more annoying than getting a leverless or a traditional fight stick and just not having fun with it. Luckily, there is a way to test out which controller type is good for you. Compared to leverless and traditional fight sticks, pad is the easiest controller to try out, and if you don't like the layout, there's other controller options that are designed for fighting games. Leverless is another easy one to test if you have a keyboard. While the layout would be different, the hand placement is familiar enough to where you might not have a lot of trouble getting adjusted. But if you're trying to get a traditional fight stick like I have, then oh boy, that's gonna be a bitch and I have to go through. The only way you could really experience it is if you had an arcade near you that had fighting games in it. And that means no Dave & Buster's. Instead, if you have one near you, go to round 1 since they have a section dedicated for fighting games. And if you don't have that, go to your local barcade. I guarantee you that you'll find a few cabinets there. And if not, well, and now we're in the hellhole that is 2025. And I won't lie, I played way more fighting games this year than I did back in like 2011, 2012. A lot of it was playing games like Strive and Melty Blood with friends. I was surprised just how much I loved the latter. And on top of that, I was able to experience Tekken 5, 6, and Tag Tournament 2, which was hard, but really fun. Speaking of which, it's time to talk about Tekken 8, the game responsible for me making this video, as well as being the most grueling thing that I've had to go through throughout this entire year. Let me explain. If you've been in the FGC space over the last few months, you've more than likely seen the absolute travesty that is Season 2 of Tekken 8. A season that was supposed to bring more defensive options, but instead became a season full of nothing but pure aggression. It was so bad early on, you had people saying stuff like this game is dead, or that Tekken 7 is far better in every way to Tekken 8. And real quick, right, if we're talking about gameplay, then yes, I would have to agree with you there. I kind of like the gameplay better in Tekken 7 than I did in Tekken 8, despite there being things I do like about Tekken 8. But you're smoking dick if you're saying that Tekken 7 looks better than Tekken 8. Have you seen Claudio in Tekken 7? That nigga's neck is bigger than his head. What about Falcarum? Or the fact that everything just looks ugh. Anyway, despite this and some of the other issues that Tekken 8 has, this game has clicked with me in a way where I didn't just play it. I'm talking about watching veterans and pro players like VDX, Ikari, and the Man Sweet, trying to find guides for how to play as certain characters, and the most surprising one of them all, studying frame data. If a game has me doing that or something equivalent of my own free will, that means there's something about this game I like, and I will be playing till the goddamn servers are gone. This was the case with League of Legends, and it has been doubly so for Tekken 8. And what's even crazier is that I spent my 200 plus hours on this game on 3 particular modes: Super Ghost Battle, Practice Mode, and what's even crazier for me, especially with a fighting game, Ranked Mode. And that shit was hell. From the time I've got the game to now, I've been doing everything from trying to understand character matchups to trying to get better at movement. I'm out here sidestepping like I'm doing the Cupid Shuffle, wave dashing, and doing Korean backdashes. The last one isn't really needed, but it's still fun as hell to do. And alongside this, I'm also trying to get a better idea on how to pilot one of my new mains, Kazuya, who according to the community is one of the hardest characters to play as, but that might have been the reason why I liked him so much. The other being that he doesn't really have any stances, so of course, you know, I don't have to think about that 24/7. Thank God. And there's one more thing regarding one of the most satisfying moves in this game. You don't understand how satisfying it is to pull this off. Even though you can make the argument that the other Mishimas are better, like Reina, Devil Jin, who was my original main, and Heihachi, I like the simplicity that Kazuya brings. Even if it means a good chunk of my moves leave me at a frame disadvantage. Overall, despite this game going through a rough patch right now, I genuinely hope that the game can overcome it. You can call me overly optimistic if you want, but there's something good here, and if they, you know, tone some of this stuff down and balance the offensive defense, they'll take a game that's good to a game that's amazing, or really good, either or. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is my history with fighting games. That's only gonna get longer from here, depending on how long I am in this mortal realm. It's kind of cathartic going through my history with the genre, and I won't lie, I might do this again for some of the others. So the more and more I think about it, the more and more fear I get at the thought of having to do JRPGs, because I know for a fact that that is going to be a bitch and a half to go through. Now, before we end things off here, I have one piece of advice for those who are wanting to, get into fighting games. And, it's nothing too complex. It's nothing like, oh, strictly play Street Fighter 6, strictly play Strive, strictly play Tekken 8, or any of this other shit. No. It's simple. If you want to get into fighting games, just play them. Simple as that. Find the game that's the most appealing to you and stick with it. It's better to play a game that hits you in the right spots than a game that's gonna make you want to break your controller in half. And with that game you choose, it can give you skills and expectations that can transfer to other games. For me, I've been sticking with Tekken 8, but whenever my friends ask me to play Strive, I'm able to get into it a little quicker since some of the concepts in Tekken 8 can apply to the mechanics in Strive. But if you want some suggestions for fighting games to play, if you want to, start out and stuff, I can honestly suggest playing the games that have been coming out for the past 5 years now. Tekken 8, Strive, and Street Fighter 6 are some of the main games people will recommend, especially since they offer resources to help new players get into them. And if you're feeling daring, you could go for some of the older games like Third Strike and Melty Blood Actress Again Current Code, or Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R. Who the fuck decided to make these titles and why are they so goddamn long? Despite how hard these games can be, there is a bunch of resources online that'll give you a good idea of the system mechanics, how to play as certain characters, and so on and so forth. So of course it makes the process of playing games like Third Strike, Melty Blood, and Guilty Gear feel less daunting and stuff. I'm also not saying the full title of the last two games because again, way too long of a goddamn title. Jesus Christ. And if you guys have any other suggestions, whether it be what fighting game to play, where to get your fight sticks from, so on and so forth, then make sure to put them in the comments down below. Or hell, let's put an extra spin on this. Let me know what the first fighting game you guys ended up ever playing, or anything relating to fighting games in general. Just put them down in the comments below. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. Next time I see you guys, we'll be covering Rito and the mystery of the Soulless Army. No matter what I do or where I am, I can never escape the clutches of Atlas. Like always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed the video. Hit the bell notification so you guys know when the next video is going to be coming out. And I'm also streaming again, yes, on Twitch and also on YouTube now. This man puts so much power into his moves. Like, it is not even funny. It's just action kick, boom. I'm pretty sure that person is dead at that point. If he's not dead, then he has a severe concussion. Fuck me. What the fuck? And make sure to stay safe, have each other's back during these uncertain times, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!